It's time for NuWellness TV with Dr. Lee. Join your host, the accomplished Dr. Cherilyn Lee, as she welcomes the leading experts in health and well-being as they explore the advancements in natural health, physical fitness, nutrition, integrative medicine, and self-discovery.
Good morning, everyone, and I want to thank you for joining in on another wonderful day. Another day that we've been blessed to wake up to be here. And not only just be here, I have such a renowned special guest. And our topic is to really help with women. There's so many women suffering needlessly, and I am honored to my heart to have my guest, Gretchen Kabaki. Dr. Kabaki. Doctor, I want to thank you so much for being here. Thank you. And you know, somebody finally texted me this morning and asked me, what was PCOS?
Yeah, it's a great question.
Yeah, and I said, it went up that way, and nobody asked what it was.
Really?
Yeah. And I'm like, and they said, yes, I'll be listening. Yes, I'll be listening. And I'm like, great. They didn't say, what is it? Except for one person this morning. And I said, I'm so glad you asked.
That is fascinating.
So I answered it.
Okay, good.
So it's polycystic ovarian syndrome. And we're going to get into that topic because it's so much to cover.
Yes.
And you are a psychologist.
I am a health psychologist. I'm known as the PCOS psychologist.
Yes. And working with from the pelvic to the brain. Mm-hmm. And I think that's so powerful that people forget that part. Mm-hmm. They go see an OBGYN and they forget the emotional component, the brain side, and that's where you come in. Right. And you have done a great job with this, and I am just honored to have you here today.
Thank you.
Just honored. So the world is going to see you. I put this out to the world.
Okay, here we are.
So here we are.
So let's talk about polycystic ovary syndrome.
Let's go.
Okay.
So let's first I want people to know a little bit more about your background and why you went into this field of medicine.
Sure.
Okay.
So being a psychologist is actually a second career for me. Mm-hmm. And I've always had an interest in psychology, but it's something where when I started to have a lot of people in my life who were going through illness, death and dying, and then also dealing with my own chronic illness issues. So I had been diagnosed with polycystic ovary syndrome, which we're going to shorten to PCOS because it's such a mouthful.
Yes. But if we go slow with it, because so many people say, I didn't know. They saw the title and they didn't know it had to do with women, and then I did put down women suffering. But ovaries,
right?
And I see it all the time.
It's a terrible name for what is a syndrome, actually not a disease.
Yes.
Because it doesn't necessarily require that you have ovarian involvement. And in fact, there is a male version of it, which nobody knows anything about really. So it's really more in the zone of what we'd call metabolic syndrome or syndrome X. Mm-hmm. And so
because diabetes is attached to this, type 2, yes.
Right. So about half of women who have PCOS will end up with type 2 diabetes by the age of 40.
40.
Which is an appalling statistic.
And I have a couple of patients with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they try to become pregnant, as you're going to be discussing.
And that's usually, women don't find out about it typically until they try to become pregnant and they can't, or they've had multiple miscarriages and they seek some professional help for it. And so where I come in as a psychologist is that I had this diagnosis, I had these problems, and I was coming home from these doctor's appointments in tears. And sometimes I was even in tears at the doctor's.
Exactly.
And they just, good people, smart people, compassionate people, but they don't have the time or the training to deal with the psychological and emotional side effects of an illness.
Yes.
Especially one like PCOS, where it is a chronic condition. So it's not just something that is limited to your reproductive years.
Yes.
It's something that you are born with and you're going to die with, and the only thing you can do is manage it.
Yes, and it can be managed.
It can be managed very effectively.
I know I have a couple of people been managed quite well.
Yes.
Yes.
But it definitely, first you have to know you have it.
The key. That's the number one key.
Yes.
Yes.
And half the women who have it don't know they have it. Mm-hmm. And I think that is really critically important. We talk now about this actually being a national health crisis because it's up to 22% of women.
22%?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
up to
That's a
22%.
lot. It left me a little speechless there for a moment. Yeah, because I know so many, and I have young people in my family that wanted to become pregnant, like late, early, middle 20s, married, and still haven't. So, they were going to their own personal OBGYNs and different things, and even going to the fertility clinics. It's not so much getting pregnant, it's being able to carry the child long term.
Right.
So it isn't. So you have to really, someone like you is so needed because there's so much emotional.
There's a lot of emotional
Yeah.
experience that goes with this. There's a lot of grief and loss. And
Yes, a lot.
Women with PCOS and other women who have problems getting pregnant, and oftentimes they experience many chemical pregnancies, false pregnancies, early or even midterm miscarriage or
Yes.
stillbirth. And those are things that are not the kinds of losses that we really talk about very much.
Exactly.
And if you can imagine, I've had patients who had 6, 8, 10 miscarriages.
And never knew.
And they didn't know they had PCOS. They had all these losses, all of this grief, and it's very discouraging to try and get up and get out of bed and go to work and
Yeah.
have a relationship and try
Right.
again and keep trying, knowing
And-
there's a good chance that
And there's someone in the media
fail.
right now, I won't say the name, but people said such negative things about her. She had a condition that nobody diagnosed, and one doctor she finally went to diagnosed it. So she decided to adopt. And then they made such a big deal out of her life. And I said, wow, I thought that was great. It was great to see what she did. And, and we should not try to judge other people. But when somebody have been misdiagnosed and then they just think, what's wrong with me? That's the first thing they want to say, well, something's wrong with me and
Right.
I'm less than a woman and what's all these other things happening to me? And what I've seen a couple of times, people in the hospitals, what they're doing for people is really been sad for a woman to miscarriage and
yes,
or have a stillbirth, and then they tell them go home.
right.
And you don't even send them home with instructions or someone to talk to like yourself. They need someone like you to speak to.
It's really important, I
Really.
think, when you're dealing, and here's another fun statistic. In the United States, up to half of adults are dealing with one or more chronic illnesses. That could be
Yeah.
as simple as high blood pressure or something like that. But it means that you've got to go to the doctor more often than other people. Maybe you're younger than average. You are dealing with things that you're not allowed, quote unquote, to do. There are restrictions, there are extra worries. So, for example, that simple blood pressure where, you take a pill and it kind of goes away. But you should have dietary management,
Yes,
exercise
yes.
management. You probably shouldn't go on certain rides at an amusement park with your kids.
Like
right?
I was going to do the parachute one, and I said, I feel if I do that, that's going to be too much on my heart.
Right.
You know.
And so people don't know those things. And actually, this is Women's Heart Health Awareness Month as
Yes,
well. So
yes.
I appreciate that you are wearing red.
Yes. Yes.
This is really tied in with PCOS also, is a lot of extra heart disease, high blood
Cardiovascular.
pressure, all the cardiovascular stuff. Of course, infertility being a huge thing, but all of this is really depressing and discouraging, especially when I
Yes.
see people in their 20s who are having problems getting pregnant or who are facing a lifetime of illness, chronic illness issues. And also, you mentioned misdiagnosis. My patient population is significantly people, not just women, who have been to
Miss-
every doctor, every
Yes.
naturopath, auricular therapist, electrologist,
the whole gamut.
acupuncturist.
Yeah.
Yeah, pick one, anybody
Yeah.
that can fix something. Right? And they're depressed. They're discouraged. Some of them are afraid of going back to the doctor because
are.
they're overweight and the only thing they're told is lose weight, lose weight, lose weight.
Yeah. Go exercise. Stop eating so much.
Exactly.
That isn't the key.
It is not.
No.
It is not. But it leads to a lot of emotional distress, and also in PCOS, the hormonal imbalance that's there contributes to depression,
Right.
anxiety, other
Exactly.
mood disorders, sleep problems, sleep apnea. Some of these things are potentially fatal.
Yes, they are. Sleep apnea could definitely be fatal.
So it's worrisome.
And then we want to go into, too, how it affects their sex life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good question.
Yes.
One I get a lot.
Yeah.
So in an informal survey of women that I conducted on Facebook, I found that about half have a libido, sex drive, equivalent to a 16-year-old boy, And the other half,
What is a 16-year-old boy? And I have a grandson, 16, so you need to tell me, what is his libido?
16-year-old boys think about nothing but sex.
16?
Oh, yeah.
Really? He's 15, you know.
He's probably thinking about sex a lot.
I didn't think so. Okay. Because I'm still seeing him as this little kid. Okay.
Yeah. So I got half of the women on that side, and then the other half. I can see we have a whole other,
We
conversation here.
Yes.
The other half have absolutely no sex drive at all. They're like, ugh, get away from me. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to talk about it. And either way, it can create a huge problem in a relationship.
Yes.
So first of all, dealing with the physical effects of PCOS, you have a tendency to be overweight, obese really, extra facial hair, losing the hair on your head, acne, hair on your arms, hair on other parts of your body that usually men only get hair. So it's a very defeminizing thing. And
Yes.
the emotional hit from that is like, who would want me? Who would look at me? Who would have sex with me? Right? And that contributes significantly to depression.
Right.
And also, with that, then if you do have a relationship, there's still the ongoing thing, because in this culture, women are led to believe that we're only attractive if we are tall, skinny, white, perfectly proportioned.
Right.
It's really distressing and discouraging, because
It certainly is, because that's totally the opposite.
that's not how most of us look.
No, it's the opposite
Yeah.
to a lot of people, yeah.
Exactly. It's impossible to achieve for most of us, except for the few supermodels, and we're not talking about them.
And they're not healthy.
We are talking about the rest of us. And the average woman in America wears a size 14 or 16, 60% of us. So all of that is something that plays into relationship issues. There's the fear
Yes.
also of, am I going to be a worthwhile person or woman if I can't reproduce, if I can't deliver multiple healthy children in
Yes.
a timely fashion without
I
going
hear that a
through
lot, yeah.
all of the gymnastics of reproductive endocrinology and IVF and all of that stuff. So that's a big thing. It's almost like the PCOS has a life of its own within the relationship. And that's true of any chronic illness. So say one of the partners has cancer. That's going to be a huge player in the relationship. But on the other side of it, having no sex drive at all, and both of these things are caused by hormonal imbalances. If you're not interested in sexuality, how interested are you going to be in seeking a romantic relationship? Well, again, the norm in society is pairing off, however that looks for you. And so it can lead to more isolation, more depression, more discouraging feelings, less self-care.
Yeah.
So that's where
I know some people that way. And I try to keep them busy and active and doing other things.
Right.
But also, we have gone through and outlined what was happening and did lab work. So I make sure all the lab work is done. Let's see what's going on with all the hormone testing, and not just estrogen. So you want the 3 estrogens tested,
Right.
and not just one. And a lot of people don't know that. So you have to really look at everything. Now, I'm very thorough when people walk in my door, so I want to know everything.
I think that's really important, because with PCOS, one of the things that happens is there's frequently this misdiagnosis or missed diagnosis or really delayed diagnosis, which
Yes.
leads to a lot of early death, actually. So in PCOS, we see not only the earlier deaths from diabetes complications, also heart disease, heart attacks in women as young as their 30s.
Yes.
Strokes, which I'd almost argue is worse than dying for some people. And then also we see a 7 times higher rate of suicide. And that is what I am all about
I'm
preventing.
going to have you involved with my, I have a nonprofit. My nonprofit is, guess what it is? It's called Beauty Shop Stroke Screening.
What?
Yes. And I'm looking at young women. In
Yes.
in their 20s.
Oh, this is
And
fantastic.
then the other is cardiovascular. I have a 3-minute test. I can do a complete cardiovascular scanning
Yeah.
on the body and look at the autonomic nervous system and everything in 3 minutes. That's my nonprofit. And then the other is breast screening for men, women, and children with infrared. So that's what I do under my nonprofit. So we're going to be a good
Oh,
team
this is
here.
interesting. Okay,
Great
yeah,
team.
because I think screening is really critical. I mean,
Yes,
it's at a point
early.
where I've studied bodies and health for so long. I actually come from a really interesting family background where my father had us all taught transcendental meditation. The entire family was signed up for it in 1975. So I've been meditating ever since. I've been doing yoga since I was a teenager. And we also did some very interesting dietary experiments that are actually now validated by science as being much healthier. So this is a lifelong passion and interest of mine about how do we balance mental and physical health. But I think the early diagnosis is really key with any chronic health condition, and particularly with PCOS, because it is highly manageable. Yes, it takes work. Yeah, most of the work's not fun. But to not have all of the dire side effects and to have a really dramatically improved quality of life, and even with the high rate of infertility, mostly to be able to manage it and deal with it if you know about it in time.
Exactly.
And know what to do
And I know
to
you
get there.
say it isn't fun. No, it isn't fun. But it doesn't have to be sad. And if you walk into it and say, if you're meditating and you walk into something and say, I'm going to beat this, this is going to be the best day of my life ever. I mean, I've been in 2 comas. So with the process of things I have gone through in the past, I still feel great. And next week I have a birthday, so I'll be 60 plus. Well, actually I'll be 67.
Happy early birthday.
Next Thursday. So I look for a gift from you, Tony.
Okay.
Just kidding. But I'm just saying that I always tell people, yes, the things I've gone through has been challenging, but it's been, each step have taken me somewhere else. And that's what you learn through going through the steps. Even though you're not going to be totally healed, but you would have, what is important is your quality of life.
Right.
Your quality of life. And that's what I tell people that I work with who have cancer, and I don't like cancer. I just say this abnormal cells. It's that you have the best quality of life. So you might not have all those cells gone, and we have some there anyway, but it's the best quality of life. And what you're speaking on, and on PCOS, it is so important that people know I'm going to work toward the best quality of life.
That's the
best
goal,
quality.
really, because I think our lives are complicated. There's a lot of stress and tension in family life, work life, society, financial life. All of it is stressful. But how do I define psychological health? It is flexibility.
Yes.
It's the ability to adapt quickly and with relative ease to stressors that are coming in.
Well put.
And that is what I'm aiming for when I work with people. Is I'm very educational about the physical things, obviously, because I live it, eat it, breathe it. And I do practice what I preach, absolutely. So trying to live a life in balance in terms of all the meditation and sleep and food and all of that kind of thing. But I'm also very passionate about having as much pleasure as we possibly can in life and as much joy. And to that end, I don't buy off on rigid, restrictive diets or excessive exercise or telling you that the only way to achieve success in meditation is if you do it 20 minutes twice a day, sitting on a little cushion.
Or the same thing with
your
exercise.
Right?
Right.
I'm saying download the Insight app for free. Find something you can do for 3 minutes. You are meditating. Congratulations.
I love that. And then people don't feel so confined and boxed into something, and then they don't continue it.
Right.
They don't continue it.
Because what happens a lot of times, as you know, is when people get a diagnosis, they get scared. And all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, I can never drink this again. I can never eat this again. I have to be at the gym 2 hours a day. And blah, blah, blah.
Where's my life?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I have a young patient right now with a condition, and he says, I don't want to sit around all day talking about my condition. I don't want to go to big support groups and talk about conditions and hear other stories about their condition, because he's young.
Right.
He said, I just want to live. Can I go play basketball? Can I, this is what he want to do. So it's important that we respect each other, and what we want to do. Some people are ill and they like their illness. So you have that other group,
Yes.
who love being sick.
That is a whole different topic.
How do you work with people that come in every week with another new symptom or diagnosis someone has given them? How do you work with? Because I know some.
So that's a really great question. I see more and more of that actually because I'm known for helping people who have multiple chronic overlapping conditions that are pretty much incurable, incredibly annoying and difficult to manage, but not actually going to kill you. So
I looked at you that way because I do have a wonderful relative. She doesn't watch my show. So,
how do I work with that?
and I
is the
love her
question,
dearly.
right?
I'll send her to you.
So what you do always with this is you start where the patient is, as you do in medical practice.
Yes.
Right. I can't take you from A to Q in 5 minutes if you're really not even hardly at A, right?
Yeah.
So it's starting where you are. It's also really individualized. So I, of course, would have my goals, which is get rid of the depression, help you sleep better, get you to lose weight, stop binging, do all those things would be my goals. But if I'm imposing those on someone, I'm not going to have very much success with it. They're not going to experience success with it. So
Right.
it's looking for what feels like a victory to the person with the illness. And yeah, there are a number of people, especially people dealing with autoimmune disorders, who are coming in on a regular basis with new symptoms. And so with that, we need to deal with the fact that there's
Yes.
some grief about it. There's some anger, there's sadness, there's fear, anxiety. We deal with all those things and then look at, all right, what does this actually mean? Is this a crisis or not? Right? Like having cancer diagnosis would be a crisis.
Right.
Getting diagnosed with diabetes is probably not a crisis, but it requires urgent attention.
Yes, very urgent.
Right.
And
So
it's going to be a lifestyle change.
exactly.
It's going
So,
to be which we should in this day and time, because we're inundated with so many things
Yes.
happening
yes.
in our environment. And saying that, where do you think? I know a lot of things are environmental, and I have my theory, and not a lot of it's not theory, on the environmental with women and why is this happening so much to women,
Yes.
especially at such an early age.
Yes.
Now, what is the age limit? Let me let you say that too, I guess. What is the age limit of this happening to these young women?
There is no age limit. So what we understand now is that you're born with the genetic predisposition, the
Okay.
genetic history to PCOS, and a lot of people don't know that they have family members with it, but when you start picking through, you'll realize you actually do know something more about it. They just never got diagnosed. It typically manifests starting in pre-puberty, so maybe
Okay.
around age 10 to 12. And some of the symptoms will start to develop. Hitting actual puberty, getting a period, often seems to be the place that sets things off. Someone who is in puberty is going through all sorts of changes, and so it often gets dismissed because it's like, well, teenagers often miss their
Yeah.
periods, and it's normal to be irregular for a while, and it'll settle down. And of course, it's normal to have acne, and it'll settle
It's
down.
okay to have a little PMS, which is more than just PMS.
Right. So with those things, we look at that age period, but then there's another hit if and when you want to get pregnant and discover you can't, or you're having a lot of miscarriages. And then heading into perimenopause, which is a period that can actually run for about 15 years. And I often liken PCOS to menopause and perimenopause symptoms, because if you look at the checklists, there's a huge crossover.
Yes.
And so all of that mood irregularity, the raging temper, the short temper, the irritability is a huge thing that I see. So all of those things, and what is actually good about menopause is that PCOS symptoms tend to settle down a little bit after
Okay.
menopause, because you just have less hormones at play.
Exactly. Exactly.
There are benefits, most definitely, and also you're used to dealing with the symptoms. So irritability, hot flashes,
Right.
sleep interference, all those things are typical PCOS symptoms anyway. So it's like, oh, what's new? This is my life.
Yeah. But then you find ways, and there are ways to help through some of that
Yes.
as well. So again, an environmental.
Environmental causes are something that, so first of all, with PCOS, we get 1/10,000th of 1% of the NIH funding for research.
Really? Okay.
1/10,000th.
Okay.
Yeah. And when you think about up to 22% of women, there is a huge mismatch around
Yes.
this. And it is not a priority. And we look at the environmental causes. We have over 2,000 chemicals in our environment and are currently studying less than 100 of them. And I agree that environmental causes and triggers are probably a huge thing. There was one study done where women with PCOS who handled receipts that had BPA in them.
I heard about that.
Yeah.
Go ahead and say that, though.
Actually showed up with a 68 times higher rate of BPA in their symptoms. And BPA is an endocrine disruptor.
Yes,
So
it is.
this is why we want to be very careful with things, making sure if you've got old plastic laying around, get rid of it.
Yeah. And you notice now some of the stores, they said, you want us to email your receipt or do you want a copy?
Yes.
It's just email it. I don't need to keep touching all this stuff.
Exactly. And I've done a little bit of research on this. Trader Joe's and Whole Foods have BPA-free receipts, for example.
Oh, they do?
They do.
Okay.
I was worried about that because
Okay.
I spend a lot of time and money there.
Okay. It's good to know that.
Yeah. So there is that. But in general, if that's just one thing that we're dealing with every single day, because all of us are whipping out our credit cards to pay for that $4 at wherever, right?
Exactly.
We're getting exposed to these things. What is in the air? What is in the packaging? How is the food being processed? There's so much unknown, and I'm not advocating stripping out everything and going back to the land and living off the grid so that you can have a clean environment, because it's not real for most of us.
No, it isn't.
Yeah.
It'd be great, but it isn't
would
real.
be great for our health, but it's not happening
Not gonna
living here in Los Angeles. It's just not. So how do we get real about that? But I absolutely believe that those things contribute to the physical breakdown. Also, there is an interplay with trauma. So it is well documented through the ACEs study that was conducted by Kaiser in San Diego many years ago, about 12,000 people, that the more childhood trauma you have, and ACEs means adverse childhood experiences,
Okay.
the higher your likelihood of having a chronic illness, of having alcoholism, of having addiction. So we know that when the body gets overstressed and the brain gets overstressed, things break.
Yes, they do.
You get diagnosed with a disease or many diseases.
Yes.
And so environmental tie-in, yes, absolutely.
Major, major. Have you noticed any of the feminine products that people wear tied into any of the...
I don't know. I think
Okay.
I don't know in terms of studies. I am personally concerned about that. So, for example, tampons that would be treated with chlorine to bleach the fibers.
Right.
That can't be good to be
No.
inserting
It
into your
has
body
been linked
regularly.
to endometriosis.
Right, which is
Yeah.
another very common
Yeah.
co-occurrence with PCOS.
Yes, it is.
So that means pain is also a common problem with PCOS.
Yes.
So it's this whole cascade of things, and we don't know a whole lot about how exactly all of that works, but again, I do believe that some of those tie-ins and a lot of the fragrances, if you're using things like douches or feminine sprays, that kind of stuff,
Even
is
deodorant. I mean, not
potentially pretty toxic.
colognes and perfumes have been linked to hormonal disturbance and imbalance. So and I had a show years ago, and I had one of the doctors on who've done all the research showing how the disturbance in using different type colognes. And a caller called in and said, "You mean I can't wear my poison?" And I'm like, I mean, how does that sound? I can't wear my poison, and we're telling you
Right.
it's a disturbance in the hormone.
Right. So that's
So-
been going on significantly, at least since the 80s. And not coincidentally,
Yes.
those of us who were born before the 80s are showing up now with a lot of these disorders. And it's complicated.
It is.
And it's not something that fits very well within our current medical model that says, let me identify one symptom, treat you, and send you on your way.
Exactly.
We see people who have dozens of
Right.
symptoms.
And not looking at the whole person.
Right.
I like to go, at one point, I do a lot of concierge, so I'm going into the home. And I like to see what's in the bathroom, what type of, toothpaste are you using, what type of, and I'll look around and I'll let them know. And they say, oh, no, it's fine, it's fine. Especially those who said, oh, I'm doing everything right. And I open up the refrigerator and like, really? What's in here that's healthy? What is in here? And then they'll laugh and say, oh, well, I didn't think you were going to do that part too. But I said, you gave me permission. You gave me permission to look. They said, okay, we're going to make
That's
some
great.
changes. So I learned a lot of things. And actually, too, in going into the homes, when we look at the emotions, to see the dynamics.
Right.
Even when people come into the office, if they come in with a couple,
Yes.
seeing how they come in and how they interact with each other, how they interface with each other. Do they sit next to each other? Do they hold hands?
Right.
You know, what is actually going on there? Not one sitting way across the room, the other one don't even come into the room. You know, and this is your better half to say, and who is having some problems. When I deal with a person, I want the whole family there. I want the whole family
It is a
there.
whole family
Yeah,
issue.
especially
most of the
when there's
time.
some chronic condition going on, because everybody needs to take part to help this person heal. And if you're not willing to be on a positive note and touch that person with loving, positive hands, then you shouldn't be there. Bottom line is you shouldn't be there.
Yeah, and this is a big problem within the world of psychology, which is
I'm sure.
that it is something where most of what happens takes place one-on-one, which is fantastic. It's very
Yes.
healing. However, not seeing those dynamics, and I've also done many years in the past with home therapy visits, and
Yes.
it is really educational.
It really is.
Really educational.
It's like, whoa, I didn't know this.
Right. Well, to see exactly what's going on, because when a person edits, you know, and this is their truth, right? This is what I accept. You are telling me the truth right now.
Yes.
But to know all of what else is going on, and quite often, especially when you've got something that is misdiagnosed or glossed over. So a lot of doctors will say, oh, this is the problem with PCOS. Here's a birth control pill, you know, call me when you want to get pregnant. That's what I was told when I was in my early 20s.
Yeah.
And I was never told about any of the rest of the stuff that could happen to me and make me incredibly unhealthy down the line. And so in psychological health, and a lot of what we deal with is, you know, this is hard. It's emotionally difficult. You need somebody to go with you. Sometimes it's really stressful. You need somebody to go with you and sit and take notes and remind you to ask certain questions.
Exactly.
Because it's so hard. And a lot of people, though, I will see there's some sabotage, right? People get fixed in their system. And, you know, if you, for example, are used to having the fat wife who doesn't go out of the house because she's depressed, well, what if all of a sudden she starts losing weight, she starts feeling better, her diseases get contained, her mood improves, she wants to get a life, she has friends
Change
now.
a hairstyle.
Right. Well, now all of a
Yeah.
sudden you don't have somebody to take care of all of your stuff, and you're worried that she might be looking at somebody else
I've
who
seen that one
is
too.
a lot more interesting than you are. And hey, wait a minute, that system's not breaking. You're going to work really hard to contain that situation. That sounds evil.
I
It's
know.
not. It's just what people do.
It is.
But all of those things need to be taken into account. You know, are people doing things to support the disease
Right.
being present?
And you have to know where you are in that, you know, and not to be an enabler in the whole situation, or
Right.
and really, you know, and say, stand up to yourself, be true to you, and say, this is what I want. But if you went into a relationship or into a marriage, you know, and if that person cannot respect now that I'm becoming this person here, you want to grow together. But if you start growing apart, then it's good to stay good friends
Right.
and be apart.
So one of the things I often counsel people about in terms of relationship is, you know, we tend to gravitate towards people who are kind of in the same place emotionally, physically, financially, spiritually, intellectually. Like, yeah, people tend to be kind of like within the zone with each
Okay,
other, right?
okay.
Not always.
Not
There's other
always,
reasons,
no,
but
'cause
the majority of average people are going to gravitate
They
towards
are.
someone who's kind of like, I'm excluding, you know, like politicians, lawyers, doctors, celebrities. That's a whole other set
That's
of
a whole nother
dynamics,
side,
right?
yes.
And I do have a practice with all of that as well.
I'm sure.
But the average person is going to gravitate towards someone who is much like them. Well, when one person starts shifting, elevating, right? And the other person, if they choose to stay down here, eventually there's going to be too much friction. They're going
Yes,
to be
it
too
is.
far apart, and they're not going to get along.
No.
So both people need to commit to growing, not exactly at the same pace or in the same way, but just growth oriented, and be committed to resolving the problems that come up as they are battling that. Because there's a lot of power struggles in couples, and desire difficulties, and different ways of wanting to approach health and money and all of those things. So.
Exactly. So, what has been, let's kind of do a case study,
Okay.
share a case study. And I want you to kind of look into my audience eyes over
Okay.
there. And what has been one of the hardest or most difficult case studies you kind of have dealt with? We don't use names in anything anyway because
No.
of HIPAA, but
So, first of all, to clarify for the audience, as a psychologist, my ethical code requires me to heavily disguise this, so I might be a little bit clunky here as I describe something. So, one of the most difficult PCOS situations that I have dealt with was a young woman who was very beautiful. She'd actually been a model in her youth, and then she went through a lot of trauma in her life, both with people and situations, like a horrendous car accident that was somewhat disfiguring. And she developed really bad symptoms, and she was well positioned enough and smart enough that she figured out that she could do certain things with diet. So she started restricting her eating. She was over exercising because at that point she didn't have to work, and she developed a really bad eating disorder. She also got incredibly depressed. Her hair started falling out, and again, she used to be a model, so this idea of like losing your hair, and she developed bad skin problems. She couldn't control her weight, so even though she was really restricting calories and exercising a lot, she kept gaining and gaining and gaining weight to the point where she did actually stop going out of the house except to come to therapy. And so that's a pretty extreme case, but the features of it are really common in PCOS. And what we were talking about a minute ago with you get told, just lose weight, just exercise more, eat a little less, it's going to be fine. All your problems will be fixed when you lose weight. Well, what it often leads to, almost 100% of the time actually in PCOS, is an eating disorder. And eating disorders are potentially fatal. And that's scary to me. It's also something where it contributes to depression and anxiety. So this young woman developed a fear of leaving the house, which is a psychological diagnosis. She was depressed, another diagnosis. She was anxious, another diagnosis. She was having panic attacks, another diagnosis, and an eating disorder. 5 psychological diagnoses. Wow. So what did we do to fix this? I assume that is something you are interested in.
yes. Because going somewhere else, they would have had a pill for each one of the diagnoses. Yes.
Right, exactly.
And a coach to bill it.
Right, exactly. And that's not at all what I'm into. I
I
want
know.
to reduce diagnoses, depathologize, by which I mean symptoms come not in a vacuum, but they come because there's a reason, an adaptational reason that we need them. So how do we treat this? The first thing is always sleep as the pillar. Most people who are dealing with depression or anxiety have really poor quality of sleep or quantity of sleep. I spend a lot of time fixing that. This immediately helps reduce food cravings, decreases depression, improves anxiety. Wow, huge, just from sleep. Then I start with meditation. Again, something I mentioned as easy as doing 3 to 5 minutes a day, using a timer, an app, that sort of thing. You don't have to go to a class or hook up with a guru in order to be able to meditate.
Right.
And that also really calms and repairs the brain. There's now a lot of evidence from studies at UCLA where we focus on mindfulness and the effectiveness of that. So that's one of the forms of meditation that I'll teach. So it's another layer of improvement. The body starts to relax a little bit. The brain starts to relax a little bit. Hormones may start to re-regulate. In this case, the young woman actually got her period back, which is a huge sign of improvement, that she went from having no period to having a period, because a woman her age should have a period regularly. And then working on things like supplements and nutrition. So I'm not a nutritionist. I don't give directives around that, but I give a lot of education about how certain foods will affect your health, your mental health, your well-being. So, and directing them towards a way of thinking about food as a support and a friend and a joy, not as pain or punishment or torture or deprivation.
Right.
Which is to say, the diet mentality. And then also working on how do we deal with things like, is it appropriate to have a little bit of medication? Would you be better served by supplementation? Is there something else you could be doing that would mean you don't actually need any medication at all? Most women with PCOS do end up needing some medication at some point. I'm not opposed to that at all, but I want to look at all those other things. And if we can get massive improvement, like this young woman had, she actually went to another country, founded a new business, and as far as I know, she's having a great life. That's what happens. That's the sad part of being a psychologist. When my patients get better, they often go away, but in a good way. I want them to.
Okay, so
So,
we're now going to my audience here. We have a wonderful surprise for them. I just met this wonderful gentleman through a very dear friend of mine, and he introduced me to him, and I love the title, 12 Dozen Roses. And he produced this, and because we have, you don't have to be with a significant other to enjoy these days.
Right.
People look at the, 14th, Valentine's Day, and I have my own interpretation, but,
It can be a really hard holiday for a lot of people.
Actually, it's always great for me. It's great because I know how to love me first. And when you love yourself first, you don't have to be in a relationship or be sitting out somebody having dinner somewhere. You don't have to have a date to have a good time. First
Exactly.
love yourself.
And love yourself
yourself.
well. And by the way, a little dose of dark chocolate daily is health food for the brain and the body. And there is an abundance of it right now.
Yes.
That is straight from Dr. Gretchen.
So enjoy, but enjoy yourself. So I hope you enjoy this wonderful song done by a very dear friend of mine. I can't see the screen to say his name, but he is just absolutely wonderful. There's a wonderful picture of him, and we're going to listen to a little of his song here, 12 Dozen Roses.
I dedicate this song to you. Never wanna let it go. You're my pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. 24 hours a day, you make me feel this way. You keep a smile on my face, and it never can be replaced. Make life so beautiful, more wonderful, just like 2 dozen roses. You make life so beautiful, more wonderful, just like 2 dozen roses. When you were born, you changed the world. When you came into my life, you made me the happiest girl. 'Cause your love you poured on me, you made me feel so complete. Nothing I will ever put above you. 'Cause you are my world, you are my truth. Without you, I can't make it. 'Cause you are my 2 dozen roses. So beautiful.
Always Carrie. Absolutely beautiful. And thank you so much for sharing that with me. I know that you're watching the show, and I want to thank you again, Carrie, for sending me this information, even though we just met a week ago. I think the timing was perfect, and thank you so much. I love that. 12 Dozen Roses. So you can visit his website, always, and ALWAZ, and then CARY.com. You can go to his site to find out more. But we'll have it all posted on our YouTube channel. And please share the show with your friends and family from our YouTube channel, Facebook. But basically, go to our YouTube channel. So we're also at iHeartRadio. So those of you who are listening or want to tune into iHeart and listen to our show, you can. But please share this with everyone, because too many women are suffering in silence. And a lot of people have teenage daughters and don't know
Yes.
this is going on and just said, you'll be okay. Take something for it. Do this, do that. And don't know that this is happening. So the best way to find out, especially if they're a virgin, you can always get an ultrasound done. My company, NuWellness Healthcare, we do offer with another company we partner with in-home concierge ultrasounds.
Wow.
So you
That's
can
great.
call me and we can get you scheduled to have an ultrasound done at home. Very, very reasonable, under $100. Can you believe this?
That is amazing.
That's amazing. This company is phenomenal and very loving. So I'm so happy that I won't say his name because he's so shy, but he is so wonderful. He's the company too that provides the carotid ultrasounds for what I call is beauty shop stroke syndrome. So he does that as well.
Oh,
So
that's
I
fantastic.
am so excited that we have things to help and show people what's happening before, because we know fibroid tumors.
Right.
And a lot of things I think have been misdiagnosed as a fibroid tumor when it was the cyst. It was a polycyst, ovarian cyst problem that was happening, and it's been misdiagnosed as ovarian or fibroid tumors. Also, it's been research showing that with women with fibroids and uterine problems from the perms. So that has shown up from putting the perms in the hair as well with a lot of women. So I want to say that it's just been, Dr. Gretchen, it's been so wonderful that you're going to be back again very soon, because we have hit on some other topics
There
that
are
I
many
want you back.
interesting topics.
Yes,
but-
especially with you being a health psychologist. Health psychologist is totally different from a person just saying, I'm a psychologist, which you're the one and only. The one and only. So I want you to give people your website so they can
Sure.
find out more about you.
The easiest way to find out more about me is to go to pcoswellness.com, and you can also find me on Facebook at PCOS Psychology, which is a private group. If you have PCOS, a couple of questions to admit you into that group. And I'm there every day answering questions, and I'm also in West Los Angeles for my private practice. So I really feel passionate about supporting women in finding out about this condition, getting better from it, and living their fullest, healthiest, happiest lives.
Yes, and I want to say what we have used. And, this show is not to diagnose or, give out any recommendations, but I have found that the CBD has been very, very powerful. And I tell people that. So if you hear me say that, the CBD, just don't go run out and buy it, because they're
Right.
not all created equal.
They definitely are not.
They are not created equal. So you want to make sure you have the right lab work done. Know your inflammation markers. I always send everyone to lifeextension.com. You can order all your lab work yourself, and then see what's happening and make an appointment to go see someone. So then you can know on a functional level what's happening. If your inflammation markers, C-reactive, these are things, especially that inflammation, you want to know what's
Right.
going on.
Because PCOS is a state of chronic inflammation.
Inflammation.
And when your body is chronically inflamed,
You-
your brain is chronically inflamed.
It certainly is. And you want to know now before later down the line there's a problem. So your hemoglobin A1C, so you know what's going on with your blood sugar, your serum insulin level. So those things you can find out early. You can do the test yourself. Then after you look at it and say, you know what, this is not correct. But still on a functional level, you're not going to get those results. So then that's where you can call myself, or if your doctor understands functional lab testing, speak to your doctor, but you can always call us at 310-419-4300, and we can help you sort that out as well. I'm a holistic person, but I'm also an NP and PA and PhD, but my daughter has her master's in nutrition. So we actually set up complete diet plans for everyone based on their program. So I find us doing a lot of things together.
Everything
You know,
has to be holistic and integrated.
has
You
to.
can't take a single
No.
element out and expect to fix everything.
Not at all. And everybody's unique. So it's not, we're not one pair of shoes don't fit everyone.
Exactly.
They're one shoe. But we want to be here to help you and support you, and know that you're not alone. You're not alone. And there's always someone there to help you. So, and in closing, in 30 seconds, I know you already said a lot already, but what would you want the audience to kind of leave with you? So, in looking into the audience eyes.
What
Yes.
I really want you to leave with is to know that this is a very common endocrine disorder. It's the most common endocrine disorder affecting women. it isn't just about fertility. It has profound effects on every part of your body, your brain, your mental health, all of your functioning. If you think you might have it, get more information,
Yes.
like on my PCOSwellness.com site, and that will start you down a path of taking control of your health, because you can live healthy and happy with PCOS.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. And thank you so much for being a guest today. Thank you, Dr. Gretchen.
Thank you so much for
You
having
were
me
just
on.
wonderful. Thank you. And so I just want to say that, I always close the show and I have something to say at the end of the show, but I want to say I want everyone, even though, again, you don't have a significant other, don't feel bad, holidays that come up and that so-called Valentine's Day thing, take time to love you. You should do this every day. Don't wait. Go buy yourself
Absolutely.
a rose. Buy yourself a rose, okay? 12 dozen roses. You don't have to buy 12 dozen,
yeah, that would be a lot.
but you can buy yourself a rose and take it home with you or take it to work with you. Enjoy yourself.
Right.
Learn to love yourself. Give yourself a hug.
Practically speaking, and this is where it's like somebody might say, oh, I can't buy myself 12 dozen roses. I would say, buy one.
But yeah, buy one.
Buy one and
Buy
focus
one.
on the beauty and perfection of
Yes.
that one rose.
And just
let
smell
that
the
be enough.
rose while you can smell it. Enjoy it. Enjoy life. And give yourself a hug every morning. Give yourself a smile in the morning every morning. Most people don't even look at themselves in the mirror. They get dressed, they don't even see themselves. So look into the eyes of yourself and tell yourself, I love you just the way you are. I love you just the way you are. Saying that to yourself. But do that naked. Really, because people just don't love themselves naked, okay?
I
Do
actually
it.
think that's a really good idea.
Yeah, do it naked. So I want to say in closing, repeat after me. I am
I am
so grateful
so grateful
that I am
that I am
a magnet
a magnet
for miracles.
for miracles.
Have a wonderful, blessed day.
Join us every Wednesday live at 11 a.m. for NuWellness TV with Dr. Lee. Remember,